We might be too young to have a spotted cow, but we are both diehard Packers fans.
I could talk about this for hours.
He was my legend. He was my quarterback one. Taysom Hill, forever in my heart.
We have a kind of a reputation of being the young and diehard fans. How was that, Dr. Pepper Taysom?
Amazing.
Okay, good. Let's keep it under 25 minutes, all right?
Welcome back to the Underage Packers podcast. In this offseason of 2023, we're just getting started in this offseason, really. There's still football to watch. We still have the draft on the horizon here. We're not in the dark months of May, June, July yet. There's a long break between the post-draft content and then pre-camp hype. That's a long break. So enjoy this time in January while we can. Big B, how are you surviving these last few weeks?
You know, I've really taken up the passion of whale watching. It's been really helping me.
What are you, 85 years old? Whale watching in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, there's whales there?
Yes, we got many whales.
Really? Are you being sarcastic, or is this
yeah. Okay, totally.
Oh, okay. You had me convinced there, and I probably look really dumb now, but that's great to hear of your fictional hobby.
Yes.
This is your first time watching. We appreciate it. If you can't tell by our names below us here, I'm Joey, and this is my co-host, Big B. So today we will be talking about Aaron Rodgers, but I promise we will have more to talk about than just that, because I'm sure every single piece of Packers content that you have consumed over these past 3 weeks have been completely focused on Aaron Rodgers and what he might do. But we will also be talking about Joe Barry and looking back at the Packers interview lists that they had when they were searching for a new defense coordinator in the January of 2021. We will be taking a look back at Brian Gutekunst's draft history now that he will be going into his 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, 22, his sixth draft as the Packers general manager in 2023. So we'll be taking a look back at those. And then we'll have some other pieces of Packers content going on in the Packers blogosphere to talk about. So without further ado, let's get on with our Aaron Rodgers talk. Now, obviously, Aaron Rodgers is going to dominate the headlines, and especially when he goes on with Pat McAfee. And, Aaron, if you haven't gotten this by yet, because I feel like some fans just have not been able to grasp this yet, that Aaron Rodgers absolutely loves to play the villain. He loves to have a chip on his shoulder, even if it is manufactured by him. And that, honestly, you can't hate him for it, because that's part of what has made him so successful over his career. But yesterday on McAfee's show, he said, as he has over the past 2 years, that people have labeled him as a villain almost purely because of his COVID vaccine stance, which I think most of that is created in his head, really. I don't know if Tom Fanning, his pretty much personal Packers PR guy, is like feeding him stuff. I don't know where he's getting this from, that all of his haters are just purely focused on his COVID stance. Aaron Rodgers, directly to you, I would not consider myself a hater of you, but let me just tell you, my negative thoughts that I might have towards you have nothing to do with your COVID stance. So let me put that out there. It is purely based on your play. Maybe a little bit of your personality, but not your political or COVID stance. So at least there's one of us.
And that COVID stuff is like so 2 years ago. Like maybe 2 years ago, people were hating on
Right.
where's COVID vaccine, but now nobody cares at all. That shit's done with pretty much.
Yeah, and there might be, sure, a few people out there, but I feel like at least most football fans are not focused on that anymore. Yeah. Maybe the tabloids who are focusing on the celebrity side of Aaron Rodgers might still be focused on that, and that's totally fair comment by him. But I don't think there's a lot of people that are basing their judgments on his play on that decision by him. That was really, he's probably admitted this by now, but just a poorly handled situation by him. But whatever, we'll move on from that. He loves to be this villain, loves to have this chip on his shoulder, and you best believe he will pull some of the same tactics that Brett Favre pulled back in 2008. If he does end up going to another team, not saying that he's going to have a deep desire to play with the NFC North team because, his relationship and his feelings about the Packers have changed ever since his holdout in 2020. He said he wanted to retire here this year. That was the whole goal of this extension that they worked out in the past off season. So I don't think he'd be as vengeful as Brett Favre was, but I do think he would very much get a thrill out of returning to Lambeau or playing against the Packers if he does end up doing that at some point in his career. And speaking of that, let's talk about a possible trade because these rumors have been building up every day since the season ended. And, I think I take less out of the reports than a lot of people do because everything on Twitter is such moment by moment, literally hour by hour. Like there's a new rumor about him. There's new teams that might be interested in him. And while I don't take too much out of those, I will say my opinion on where this is going has changed since the day after the Lions game. After the Lions game and pretty much all throughout this past season, my thoughts was he's either going to walk away from a heck of a lot of money or he's going to continue playing for the Packers. I don't see him getting traded. But just based on kind of what Brian Gutekunst said, what Aaron Rodgers has said, and taking just a little bit, a smidge out of the reports, I feel pretty split on what he will do in this next year. But as he said on McAfee shows yesterday, he doesn't even know if he's going to play this year at all. So I think once we get into February, March, those talks will definitely pick up. Those discussions between Rodgers and the Packers, just wanted to see where both sides are heading. Aaron Rodgers explicitly said on the McAfee show, Big B even tweeted out there that he thinks, and a lot of people think that Rodgers' decision on if he wants to stick with the Packers is mostly going to be based off of how many of his buddies stay on the team. And while that is an aspect of this, Rodgers is more so saying that he does not want to be a part of a rebuild, and he shouldn't. That would be stupid for the Packers to try to rebuild with their 39-year-old quarterback who is getting paid a lot of money. That would just not make sense for either side, really. Rodgers wants to go out there and win another championship, win another MVP, and if the Packers are rebuilding, that is not in the likelihood for Aaron Rodgers. So I completely get where Rodgers would want to see where the direction of this team is going. So I'm not sure where things are heading. I'm taking it day by day. My feelings, my opinions on everything that might happen changing constantly. But Big B, what has been your thoughts on this saga of Aaron Rodgers for the third year in the very early stages?
Man, it's been a shit show. The past couple weeks. I think him being traded to the Jets is probably going to be the best offer that the Packers will probably get. So that will probably be the team.
Yeah.
Because of their crazy ass owner who are willing to give up probably 2 first-round picks, which I'll happily take. I don't care. That's perfect going into the Jordan Love era is to have as many picks as you can possibly can to build a team around him. But yeah, everything is just irrelevant at this point until Aaron makes the decision. I'm just gonna just step back, read a couple articles, see what at like Schefter and all them are actually saying in these articles, if they do come out. But yeah, like Aaron said on Pat McAfee, everything's just irrelevant at this point until Aaron makes the decision. And it'll probably be a month or two until he does. So, we're just getting started. And it's already very annoying because we had to deal with this the past 3 years already.
Definitely. And going back to what you mentioned and what I was talking about the direction of this team, it does feel like there is a disconnect from where the front office thinks this team is at and where us fans think the team is at. And I don't know which one of it is right. I'm more on the side of the fans, obviously, but the fans seem to be of the opinion that this team is not where it should be to run it back or go all in. And I just feel like the best case scenario for you is a trade to the Jets, like you mentioned, Big B, or another team. And what will be important to keep in mind over these trade discussions, if that does end up to be the decided outcome of this by both sides, is that, obviously the team is wanting to get Aaron Rodgers as a player. Even at 39 going on 40, Aaron Rodgers would be the best quarterback certain teams have had in a decade, and even more than that, really. But also, getting Aaron Rodgers is a big time marketing move for any of these teams. When Tom Brady was signed by the Buccaneers, they wanted Tom Brady as a player, but they also wanted the name Tom Brady. So, like you mentioned, Big B, I think the Jets owner, I got to look this up, but I want to say it's Mike Douglas, or maybe that's the general manager here. No, it's
Packer player.
wait, what did I say?
Mike Douglas. That's a former
Mike.
linebacker.
Yeah. Don't know where I'm going. Okay, here we go. Owner for the Jets is Woody Johnson. But that the owner wanting a big marketing chess piece is going to play into this. Jim Irsay is a crazy dude, as we've seen, and need of a quarterback, need of a new spark there in Indy. So could definitely see him. You have the Raiders, and oh my God, if they didn't sell plenty of jerseys of Devontae Adams this past year, I can only imagine that both Devontae Adams jersey sales and then Aaron Rodgers would be huge for them, especially how cash-strapped they seem to be. I mean, they literally cannot afford to fire Josh McDaniels, which is a crazy, crazy thing, not being able to afford to fire somebody. So would be big for a lot of these teams to have Aaron Rodgers. And, speaking of that, the Packers do have Aaron Rodgers to thank, obviously. And like I said in our previous episode, that if Aaron Rodgers does end up retiring or go to another team, you best believe, no matter how we're talking about him now, we will have like an hour or 2-hour episode praising him for this past decade of great play. But the Packers, business-wise, do have a lot to thank Aaron Rodgers for. So I don't know, man, but you can pay attention. You can go crazy over all the articles. You can do whatever over these past few months, but at the end of the day, it's going to be a mutual decision from both Aaron Rodgers and this Packers front office. Now, one last thing I wanted to talk about with Aaron Rodgers was these passionate stands of him. Okay. Now, this is purely on Twitter, and maybe it's a biased selection by me, but it seems to me that like there's a good part of the Aaron Rodgers stan club that is just like so hostile to anybody, and like all of their opinions on this is purely based on logic. And like there are some reasonable Aaron Rodgers fans who make some decent points. Like, hey, he didn't have his best season this year, but he was playing with a broken thumb. He was playing with broken ribs. He didn't have Devontae Adams. He only had a great wide receiver in the second half of the season. Offensive line wasn't great for the whole year. And those are some very valid points. But the flip side of that is that he is 39, and this team is not at the spot it should be. And, the people who seem to be making those reasonable arguments on the Aaron Rodgers side seem to be either much less or just a silent majority coming from that side, because there are plenty of people who are just very hostile, like idiots, who will like personally attack anybody who doesn't praise Aaron Rodgers. I mean, our friend Monty Moore was like, I can't remember who he was told, but he was basically told he's worthless and like is just a idiot who needs to work out to feel meaning in life because he is jacked. But like, what are we going on? Like, can you not take a step back and be like, even though it is Twitter and you are hiding behind a a nameless profile picture and everything. Like, can you take a step back and realize, like, what are you doing with your life to the point that you are going like this deep on a personal level on arguments about what team should do with Aaron Rodgers? My God, it's annoying. But hey, you do you, I guess. And I feel I tweeted this out a few weeks ago, right after the season ended. Like, you got to be able to take your emotions out of this whole situation. And I honestly feel that if anybody should have strong emotions about this situation, it should be us two. Like, literally, Aaron Rodgers is a big part of why we love football. I'm sure I still would have been interested in it, but if the Packers weren't going to the playoffs nearly every year and having great success because of Aaron Rodgers, I don't know if I'd be as in love with it as I am right now. And Big B, meeting Aaron Rodgers will be one of the best days of his life, having that conversation with him. Aaron Rodgers seeing one of our videos will always be one of the greatest moments of our life. So, like, I feel like if anybody should be able to take their emotions or should have strong emotions in it, it should be us two. But somehow that's not the case. We are able to take our emotions out of it. And it is funny to see these Aaron Rodgers fan going berserk over anybody that does not agree with them.
The best tweet, though, I have seen from an Aaron Rodgers fan is that, like, 2-minute video of him literally, like, having an essay on, like, why Rodgers is good. Like, it was hilarious. And that was the best thing I have watched in nearly, like, 3 months. It was hysterical.
I need to ask Zachary Jacobson or somebody on Twitter to see if we can get that video, because he deleted it. But basically, Zachary Jacobson, for some reason, is like a main target of these Aaron Rodgers fans. Honestly, I don't know why. I feel like there's a lot of people who act like Jake Morley and Zachary Jacobson, just these writers. I'm not trying to insult them or what they do, because they obviously do great work. But like, people are acting like they are like the mayors of Green Bay or like the president of the Packers. Like, no, these are just like Packers fans that write. So basically, Zachary Jacobson on Twitter was like, somehow started a thread, and he was kind of antagonizing this Aaron Rodgers stand here. And he made him so mad that this Aaron Rodgers fan recorded a video in his car. It was the most awkward situation ever. He's sitting there like this, and he's like, you know what, Zach, I'm working a real job here, but I'm so mad at you that I'm still going to record this video on the clock and tell you how much you suck. Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback alive. He's going to be great until he's 85 years old. If the Packers don't keep him for eternity and don't keep on paying him a ridiculous amount of money for him to underperform, then they are going down badly. Definitely paraphrasing a bit there, but it was so hilarious that this guy got so irritated with Zach's tweets. And yeah, he did himself a prop there by deleting it, but it was so very entertaining for me to watch. I watched that video at 11 o'clock at night after a very long day. I'd been gone from home from like 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And I get home, watch the most bizarre Adam Sandler movie I've ever watched, and then I see that while looking down at my phone. It's like, what is going on right now in the world? So I won't mention that guy's app, but seriously, thank you for that, brother.
Yeah, and props to him because he's getting paid on the job. I mean, he's getting paid to make that.
Yeah, man.
Got to give him credit there.
Definitely. All right. Speaking of other things going on Twitter, the week before this, Cheesehead TV writer Bruce Irons published an article titled 3 Reasons Why the Packers Should Move On from Aaron Jones. And people understandably got irate. And, Bruce was attacked on Twitter. Cheesehead TV was attacked on Twitter. There was people that were very confused and thought like every article from Cheesehead TV was like written between Aaron Nagler, Corey Banke, and Cheesehead TV, because that's the only 3 faces they know from Cheesehead TV, even though Tyler, who runs the Cheesehead TV social media, did not post that. Every article was published by a bot. Long story short, I thought people were overreacting to this a little bit because they were calling it clickbait. And I feel like people have kind of lost sight of what clickbait means. And while,
People have lost sight of what clickbait means in 2017. I mean,
yeah,
this is not
yeah,
news.
yeah. And, the title of the article was definitely intended to get a reaction out of people and to get them to click on the link. And that is every news story, every piece of content. But clickbait would be if Bruce titled the article, like, I don't know, here's, I have proof the Packers are going to move on from Aaron Jones. Like, that's clickbait. But the title of the article was three reasons why the Packers should move on from Aaron Jones. And he made three arguments on why the Packers should move on from Aaron Jones. And they weren't out of this world. He said, he's getting up there in age for a running back. They're going to have to pay him a lot of money. They've, kicked the can down the road with so many of these players. The only way to keep Aaron Jones really on a reasonable contract is to do that again with him. And honestly, like, moving on from Aaron Jones after year 2 was like the agreed upon idea by almost every fan when this contract was signed. So, like, it wasn't an insane idea by Bruce. Aaron Jones is one of my favorite players, though. I disagree. I don't think they should. And I think they'll find a way to work it out at the end of the day. But I found people's overreactions to that funny. I messaged Bruce and just said, hey, I disagree with pretty much everything you said there besides your reasoning, which was completely fair. You made a solid argument that I disagree with. So, that was just a bit funny to me. All right. Next on our list of discussion is Joe Barry. So I need to pop up and Diet Dr. Pepper, all right?
Oh boy,
Yeah,
things are
you're
getting
making one of
serious here. You know when the Dr. Peppers are opening, we're
Yeah.
getting serious.
Now we're getting into the nitty-gritty of this discussion here, all right? Look, I don't know how to feel about Joe Barry, okay? I see a lot of people that were upset that they didn't fire him after this season, and I can't say that I'm jumping up and down that they are keeping him. But if this team truly is planning on running it back like they plan to do, I'm here to tell you that keeping Joe Barry is probably the best thing to do in that scenario rather than hiring a new coordinator and starting a new system when you're trying to keep this team intact, really. And I just find it annoying that there are people out there who think firing a coordinator, going out there and getting a new one solves all of the problems on defense. I'm sure, hey, Barry has not used his talent to their best use, but hiring Jim Leonard, sure, that's great. Mike Pettin 2.0, that's all fine and dandy. He was great at Wisconsin, whatever, but he doesn't change the fact that Adrian Amos is regressing and that he's going to be an unrestricted free agent and they basically have nobody at safety. He's not going to change all the other depth issues. He's not going to change all the other players that we were hopeful on them developing and haven't gotten to where they should be yet. He can't change that. And maybe he can assist in the development of players, but Jim Leonard, no other defense coordinator can take a magic wand to all of the Packers' issues on defense and magically solve all of them. And, it is hard, though, to look back at the potential coordinators that the Packers interviewed in 2021 after moving on from Mike Pettin. All right. Joe Barry was a guy that had 2 failed stints at defensive coordinator and then was a linebackers coach with the Los Angeles Rams. And at the time he was hired, there was a lot of people that were not in support of this. And my main argument at that time was like, look, you doing a simple search of his Wikipedia page, simple search of PFF does not give you all the information you need. I'm 100% sure that Matt LaFleur was completely aware of those previous stints when he hired him, and he still thought he is good enough to be my defensive coordinator. However, now looking back at it, it's like, man, history repeated itself, and here we are again. And hey, Joe Barry could have some magical turnaround in year 3, but who knows? But they also interviewed Packers cornerbacks or secondary coach Jerry Gray who was with a team, I want to say 1 or 2 years at the time that he was interviewed. And then also Ejiro Evero, who is now receiving head coaching interviews with the Indianapolis Colts and the Houston Texans after he put up a really good defensive unit in Denver, even on an awful, awful team. And Jerry Gray, heck, is now receiving DC interviews. He's been a defense coordinator in the league before, but he's receiving defense coordinator interviews for Chicago and Atlanta. So it just feels like Matt LaFleur really missed out on 2 great candidates here. Evero specifically was my favorite when during that hiring process because he was going to be kind of the same thing that Matt LaFleur had wanted in Joe Barry in the Fangio type system. But LaFleur had spent some time with Barry, was not as familiar with Evero. So that's ultimately why Barry got the nod, and he has not performed so far. Big B, what are your thoughts now in hindsight, looking back at that hiring process and really the future of Joe Barry?
Yeah, I mean, of course, I really want Joe Barry to be fired, but like you said, it makes no sense if we're running it back.
Mm-hmm.
I really wish we hired Evero because, man, things would be so much different. I think the defense would have been so much better if you can make the Broncos defense how good made them that good.
Yeah.
I can only imagine what he can do with all that talent on our defense. But looking back to this season, last season, whatever you want to say now that we're not playing in the playoffs anymore, like I would really be curious to see if all those players on defense still regressed and still didn't make the second year jumps, third year jumps that we were expecting. Like if Evero was the defensive coordinator, I'm just thinking, do they still regress last year? Like who do we say? Darnell Savage, does he actually progress and develop into an actual good safety? Like these are the questions I have. But if those don't happen, I mean, I think we'd be in the same boat, honestly, as we are right now.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know too much about the plays that Barry is calling. I know most of them aren't working, but the biggest thing from even 3,000 steps back is like this team, especially on defense, does not know how to utilize their talent. There were so many players that took way too long to be replaced. And when they came in, it was like, oh my God, how have they not been in this role all season? Why did it take so freaking long for Rasul Douglas to be moved outside when the slot was clearly not working for him? Why did it take so long for Rudy Ford to get snaps on this defense and Darnell Savage to virtually take a spot on the bench? So frustrating, and I blame half of that on Barry, but also, like I said, that's happening on all three phases, whether it be Keyshawn Nixon at punt and kick returner, whether that be, Christian Watson getting more involved, although he did have injuries, figuring out the offensive line. Just, it seems like this coaching staff does not have a proper grip on how to move their pieces. And it's frustrating. And, that's the one thing you can sit and blame Barry for sure. And, the one caveat to what I said earlier about starting over, and you mentioned this too, starting over when you're trying to, I guess, go all in, when you're trying to keep the same team intact. The one caveat to that is that Jerry Gray would be at least a little bit familiar with all of these players. And I'm sure he would definitely put his own spin on the system, but I'm sure, he understands what these players are familiar with, what they've been running. And, honestly, I would rule out the possibility of Barry being fired and then finding an outside candidate. But I don't put a 0% chance on the Packers maybe evaluating this and saying, look, let's right this wrong and go with Gray at defense coordinator. And I don't think Joe Barry's going to get any jobs anytime soon. So let's value his voice and keep him as a defensive assistant. Ain't that great? But yeah, this defense coordinator, maddening process, maddening to look back on who they missed out on, opposed to the 2019 head coaching cycle when there was a lot of bad coaches in there, but they ended with Matt LaFleur, who, I mean, at the time was pretty similar to Joe Barry's previous coaching career, where he was not great as the play caller in Tennessee. But because of the system he was running, that's why the Packers hired him to get the Shanahan offense in, and he's been successful so far. Same thing with Barry. He did not have a great track record, but he was going to run that Vic Fangio system. But complete opposite, has not worked out too great yet. So that's our Joe Barry talk for today. I'm sure there's just about as many people that are as passionate about keeping Aaron Rodgers as there is moving on from Joe Barry. So I'm sure few people will take umbrage to what we've said there. But it's not like I'm saying Joe Barry's a great defense coordinator. Now, moving on, we've talked about, we're talking about all the levels here today. We focused on one player and Aaron Rodgers. We focused on the direction this team is going overall. We focused on coaches, and now we're moving one step forward to the front office. At the end of the episode, we'll talk about Wes Hockwitz and Mike Spofford in the media office. I don't know. But Brian Gutekunst here. I wanted to take a look back at his drafts because I feel like my opinion on Gutekunst changes every year. I told him at training camp this past year when I met him, I said, hey, man, keep doing great work because I wanted him to have my confidence. I'm sure I helped him along there, made some decisions. I mean, I'm not lying. He looked like the happiest man in the world when I told him that. He's probably thinking when he came up to like some 17-year-old kid, he's like, crap. This kid's a Madden player and he's going to tell me I'm doing everything wrong. But he looked very happy when I gave him that compliment. But I'm definitely more on the support side and then hating all of his decisions. But let's take a proper evaluation on at least his drafts. And I want to write an article eventually on evaluating everything that encompasses a GM job and how Gutekunst has done on that. But the drafts specifically, first, let's look at his first round picks, which have honestly been very, very good, if I would say so myself. So you have Jair Alexander in the first round of his first draft, home run at pick 18. I mean, no matter what came out of this trade, like disregard that, but the fact that they moved from 12 to, I want to say 26, back to 18 to get Jair Alexander and a first round pick out of that bombshell grand slam plus Brian Gutekunst. And then next year, they get Rashawn Gary, another home run. Darnell Savage. Then in 2020, can't skip Jordan Love. Still too early to tell. 2021, you get Eric Stokes. Too early to tell. Promising rookie season. Not so great of a sophomore year. Then this year, you get Devontae Wyatt and Quay Walker, which we'll have to see what turns into them. Both of them showed promise this year, but their seasons were also filled with rookie mistakes. Now, the first round for Gutekunst has been a much more prettier picture than day two. Okay? So brace yourselves. All right. You have the good, which is Christian Watson, A.J. Dillon, Elton Jenkins. You can maybe include Josiah DeGuara in there if you wanted. But then the bad list is much longer. You have Jay Sternberg, Josh Jackson, Oren Burks, Amari Rodgers, and still way too early to tell, but Sean Ryan had a disappointing season from what we heard. So day two is not great. Okay. And what I really want to look at with Gutekunst is kind of what those drafts can tell us about the direction this team was heading in and kind of how they have helped this team over the past few years. So in 2018, Gutekunst, was handed a pretty bad team. Okay. And he adds great player in Jair Alexander. He also gets Marquez Valdez-Scantling in that draft. So a solid there. And then when you look at, I think the one that tells us really the most about the direction the team was heading at that time was 2020, when this front office wanted to get the Matt LaFleur team. And that was very evident with Jordan Love, with A.J. Dillon, and Josiah DeGuara, all players that could have been picked by Matt LaFleur himself, and we'd have, no surprise at all. And, this team, with how they did in 2020 and 2021, kind of changed the opinion of this front office about where they were going. And, the comments at that time in 2020 were, this draft class, sure, in 5 years it might look good, but the Packers need to be an all-in team now and to make the most with this Aaron Rodgers window. And we've talked about the decision to draft Jordan Love time and time again, so I'm not going to spend time on that anymore. But like that 2020 draft, you do think now, like the draft analysis, while they might have been wrong in their evaluation on Jordan Love, A.J. Dillon made 2 instant of reactions to that. I can't say they're wrong when, if they get a few more early impact players, more NFL ready players that can contribute to this team right away, that maybe they do end up getting a Super Bowl over 2020, 2021. And honestly, those players in the 2020 class have not developed like we thought. You got 2 solid starters in A.J. Dillon, John Runyon out of there. But other than that, it's not been great. I mean, Kamal Martin got cut this past training camp. Josiah DeGuara, you can pretty much count this past year as his second year. And I still have hope for him to be a kind of a Swiss Army knife for this offense, but has not gotten as involved in the receiving game as we had hoped he would be after watching what he did in Cincinnati University, that is. So 2020 just kind of maybe a missed opportunity, but, the obvious thing to that is that if Jordan Love ends up to be a franchise quarterback for this team for the next 10, 15 years, does not matter at all what happens past pick 26. So, all right, we got Jordan Love. Maybe, in 2005, they got Nick Collins, Aaron Rodgers. So maybe like one of these players will suddenly have a big breakout year. I don't know. But overall, Gutekunst has done solid job at drafting. He's kept this Packers philosophy going, the one that has been run with Ted Thompson, with Ron Wolf. So, who's not Mike McCarthy, but Mike Sherman, who was, I can't believe they gave him head coach and GM job. Folks, if Vince Lombardi cannot handle both GM and head coach in the year 1967, then it is time to say no to that. Like, Bill Belichick is the only exception, but sorry for that tangent. Don't give a guy head coach and GM jobs, all right? Like, look at Bill O'Brien. He got mad about something that DeAndre Hopkins was mean to him, so he gets an awful deal for Hopkins to Arizona and completely puts that franchise up in flames. But anyways, Gutekunst's draft classes have been good. There's been bad. Big B, what are your overall thoughts on this 5 years of history for Gutekunst in the draft now?
Yeah, I think Brian has done okay. I mean, you have the 2018 draft. I mean, you hit on Jair Alexander, and then you also get a very decent player in Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Yep. So how I think of it, if you hit on your first round pick and then you get at least 1 to 2 other at least role players or decent players that contribute later in the draft, I mean, I call that wins. So, yeah. I mean, he's done that pretty much every year. He's been the GM. So I think he's done a great job in the draft. And, 2020, we'll have to see. Not, of course, with Jordan Love and Josiah DeGuara, who hasn't really got much playing time, really. But he is the only tight end under contract currently. So, I mean, he might actually get more playing time as an actual tight end this year.
Yeah.
You never know. So, yeah, overall, I think Goot has done a great job at drafting, and I'm excited to see what he does this year.
Yeah, what you mentioned there about, like, what you consider a successful draft. I do think Packers fans lose sight of that sometimes. Like I guess they think that every other team is having 5 out of 8 picks hit every single draft. That is not the case. The draft is very difficult. And what's crazy is like the Kansas City Chiefs, who are considered the gold standard at everything in the NFL. Like Brett Veach is I wouldn't say awful, but he's a pretty bad drafter. Like this man drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire in the first round of the draft when Andy Reid's system does not use that. I mean, looking back at the draft history now, I'm not, 2022 actually, like you get Isaiah Pacheco, who has become a very solid contributor for them on offense in the 7th round, so that's good. George Karlaftis, who I love, they got at pick 30. Trent McDuffie, haven't heard too much about him, but like looking at, I mean, let's look here at the 2020 draft for the Kansas City Chiefs. You got Edwards-Helaire, Willie Gay, Lucas Nying, L'Jarius Sneed, Michael Dana, the Carius Keys. Like, he's got some decent offensive players, but man, if he didn't get Patrick Mahomes at pick 10, then this man is viewed as a failure as a general manager, really.
Yeah.
So
every other team doesn't have the draft like the Seattle Seahawks had this previous year. Like every other franchise does not have that. Like that's rare to get that many solid contributors in their rookie year. Like Seattle like absolutely knocked it out of the park. I think we all know that.
Yeah.
Kenneth Walker is in the running for offensive rookie of the year. Like that just doesn't happen that often. And shout out to Seattle's GM for doing that because he killed it in that draft.
Yeah, I mean Seattle as a whole, really. I mean, they go into this season so a lot of doubts surrounded around them. They have a really old head coach. They trade away Russell Wilson and they go with Geno freaking Smith as their starting quarterback going into the season. But man, props to them for the season they had this year.
Yes.
Just talking about the draft gets me so excited. I feel like I'm already feeling the air of spring days in April where we're like previewing draft projects. It smells so good. I need to make that into a candle. Draft prep. That's a great scent right there. Just spring air. Okay. That's the evaluation of Good's drafts, and that's all we have about the Packers to talk today. One thing I wanted to add in there was Bob Harlan did an interview with John Anderson and Trevor Zegras. I'm probably not saying Trevor's last name wrong, but just did an outstanding interview with them. I'm about halfway through it on Inside Wisconsin. So make sure you check that out because he talks a lot about the business side of the Packers. So if you're like me and Big B and care about that really niche stuff, it's a great interview for you. It was great to hear Bob talk about that because we don't see him or hear from him that much. And props to him. Great for him. I hope he's enjoying his life out there, just secluded in retirement, having a few brewskis. Hopefully staying healthy. He's got great son, a great granddaughter, who are both great in broadcasting for the NFL. So love me some Bob Harlan. Make sure you check that interview out. Big B, any other thoughts you wanted to add on the Packers, or you have your Wisconsin hat on? Are you excited for Luke Fickell?
Oh yeah, I'm so excited. This is the most excited I have been to watch a Badger season in I think ever. So I cannot wait until they start up. We got a squad this year. We're coming for the national championship. You heard it here first. We're winning that thing. First year, Luke Fickell will get it done, baby. Let's go.
Well, I was shocked here that they were able to get him. I don't know why he left Cincinnati, but I know very, very few college football head coaches, but Luke has been one that I've heard about over the past few years. Like he seems to be all right. So, hey, Mizzou's in the SEC, so I don't really care what you guys are up doing in the Big Ten. So have fun with that, I guess.
Yeah, he's a Big Ten guy. He coached at Ohio State, so he said that he's always wanted to come to Wisconsin. So hey, we're happy to have him because he's absolutely killed it in recruiting, and we actually got quarterbacks who might
Yeah.
actually be above average for once. So woohoo.
I want to read more about college football because it seems like this year, I know they had an all-time high for players in the transfer portal, which it was an insane number, and just the business of it all is just crazy, and like just life for these players is so weird. Like compared to the normal college student, just such a very different experience for them. So yeah, they got a lot of quarterbacks I know this year. Hopefully, I remember that one game that Graham Mertz had against, I think, Illinois, where he crushed it and everybody was big fans of him. And then that changed very quickly.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Like he came out looking like Patrick Mahomes, and then he just fell off the steepest cliff I have ever seen in my life. And I'm glad he's gone, Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Where did he transfer to Florida?
I believe so. I think he
Okay.
transferred to a Florida college. I'm not sure what Florida college, since there's probably like 230 in that state. So yeah.
All right. Well, that's all we got for you today here on the Underage Packers podcast. We thank you for listening. Hey, we are not going anywhere during this offseason. Like I said in our last episode, the offseason can be even more fun, at least for these podcast episodes, when we have something to talk about with free agency, the draft, training camp, my favorite time of the calendar year, baby. So, hey, we still got, 6-7 months until then, but we can get hyped now. We're in pre-camp mode all the time, really. So thank you so much for watching. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. Follow us on all the social medias, and we'll talk to you later. As always, go Pack Go.